So what is Bao? Well, Bao's a game of the Mancala or Mancala family of African games. They're commonly known as pit and pebble or count and capture games, and there are very, very many different varieties in this family. I've seen quite a few YouTube videos and articles on how to play Mancala, and it's a little bit like saying, well, let's play cards. Well, what is cards? Well, cards is a generic term for very, very many different versions of games, and in the same way that Mancala is, and Bao is just one of those games. The object of this game is to move your seeds around the board in such a way that you will capture seeds of your opponent. And it's not about capturing all of your opponent's seeds, it's either about capturing all of your opponent's front row, this row here, as is, and this is my front row, which is he is going to try to be capturing, or leaving your opponent in the situation where they have no legitimate moves. And we'll come on to explain a little bit more about that when we get further into the rules. In the game of Bao, there are two distinct types of move. And one is a move where you sow and capture seeds of your opponent, and the other is a move where you sow seeds but you don't capture from your opponent. And this will bring us on to one of perhaps the first rules, and that rule is that if you are in a situation where you can capture, then you are obliged to capture. You don't have a choice in this matter. Okay, so we're going to look at the situation where we can capture now. And don't worry too much about the mechanics of how I'm making the move. It's just the end result really that we're looking at in this particular shot. So how do we go about capturing? A capture situation is where I've got a situation like I have here now, where I've got seeds in my front row, and in my opponent's front row there are also seeds. Okay, and this is the important thing. There must be seeds in my front row and in my opponent's front row. And if we look at these two front rows here, the only capture available to me is this one here, because there are seeds opposite me here. Here I don't have seeds, here I have seeds, but there are no seeds opposite. So, how do we make the capture? I'm going to take these seeds now and I'm going to sow them in this direction. And the critical thing is, it's where the last seed lands. Okay, so I've picked them from this hole. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. Now the last seed has landed in this group here, and there are seeds opposite. And I capture those two seeds, and then I will reintroduce those seeds to my side of the board. And I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. I'll just put those back and go through that once again. Here is a situation where I capture. I'm sowing the seeds. The last seed that falls into seeds on my side, and there are seeds opposite, so I now can capture those two seeds, and that is the basis of a capture move. Okay, so now we're going to look at a situation where we can't capture. Looking at the two front rows, the front row of my opponent has seeds in it, my front row has seeds in it, but at no stage are there any seeds opposite. Wherever the opponent has seeds, I don't have seeds opposing, and where I have seeds, my opponent has no seeds opposing. So there is no capture. So now I have to make a move, and it is a move without capture. And when you start a move without capture, you cannot capture at all throughout that move, because you do get a repetition of the sowing. It's important to say at this stage that I only move my seeds on my side of the board, and the direction can change. So there's no sort of clockwise or anti-clockwise direction. The direction can change, but I'll come on to that in a little while. The only time I go over to my opponent's side is to capture seeds, and at no other stage do I touch my opponent's seeds. So let's carry on with the move as we did before. I'm just going to take these three stones. Don't worry again about how I make the move. The important thing is where the last seed or stone ends. 1, 2, 3. And it's landed in a hole here. There wasn't any capture, but now because my last seed has landed in there, there was no capture, but I can now pick these seeds up and continue sowing them. So I pick all of these seeds up. I was sowing in a direction, I carry on in that same direction. I've picked up from this hole, I don't sow back into that hole, I carry on with the next hole. And here you will see, as I start to go round, I now get to the end of my row and I turn the corner. So I start coming back on myself and landing here. Here again we have the same situation. Last seed has landed in here. I then pick those up and continue in the same direction of sowing. So I'm going to work my way around this way. And on we carry. And this can carry on for quite some considerable time. Now here, the seed has fallen back in this hole. There was no other seed in here, so that's where the turn ends. Okay, that's the end of a sowing move without a harvest. So if we capture some seeds from our opponent, where do we reintroduce those seeds? Well, you guessed it, I've marked it out on the board here. It's the two very end holes on the front row, and that, if I'd captured seeds from my opponent, I would either reintroduce into this hole or this hole. And the same is true of my opponent. Mirrored, you know, these two holes here are where he would reintroduce his seeds. So let's say that I do a move similar to what I did before. 2, 3. The last seed has fallen in this hole. I've now captured these 3 seeds. And they will be reintroduced either at this hole or this hole. Now there are certain rules that govern which hole the seeds can be reintroduced into, and it will vary according to the stage of the game. So don't particularly ask why at this stage I'm going to reintroduce them from this hole, and that is because it actually maintains the same direction of travel as we were going in. So you just have to take my word for it at this stage. So we reintroduce these seeds, 1, 2 and 3, and that is how we carry on. If I'd only captured one seed from this side, if that last seed had landed in there and there was only one seed in there, it would be exactly the same. It would go in there, and that is where it would end. Because it was a capturing move, let's just put a little situation here like this. I captured the seeds of my opponent, I bring them back in on this side. 1, 2, 3. My move has already started with the capture. There, I've landed in this hole. I've got another capture. There was a seed in that hole and there was a seed in that hole. I can now capture that one, and that again would be reintroduced into that same hole. There's already a seed in there. It's as if I've landed in, it's as if I've already come in from this direction, so I would just have that same continuation of sowing. 1, 2. Seeds in the hole still. 1, 2, 3. Seeds in the hole still. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. The end of my turn. So we can carry on round the board. You know, once you've captured seeds, you can actually end up coming back round a few times. Whenever seeds are captured and returned to the board, so if I capture these seeds of my opponent and I return them to the board either on this hole or this hole, they must always be returned on the front row, towards the middle of the front row. What I'm trying to say there is they must never be returned in the direction of the back row. So if I return them to this hole, obviously I start returning in an anti-clockwise direction. I'll just pick a few seeds at random. If I capture some seeds and I return them in this hole, they come in a clockwise direction. So depending on the hole that you return them to will alter the direction of the travel. But they must never, this situation cannot happen where they're returned towards the back row. You can turn a corner. Let's say I pick up in excess of 8 seeds and return them. I could end up starting here, working my way along, and then turning back round the corner. But that's once they've already been introduced into the front row. They must always be feeding into the front row. They can then continue round the corner, but you cannot sew back towards the back row on this return of the seeds to the board. Okay, let's talk about the rules of bowing. We just talked about the moves. Now it comes to the rules. Well, the rule book is, not easy to follow. There are a lot of rules, and I tried to learn this game by following the rules, and I found it almost impossible. I actually started playing by playing online on a site, and that really gave me a grounding in this. And the thing I was very, very surprised was that there was nothing on YouTube at all giving the rules of bow. So that's why we're at the stage that we are now, and I'm just trying to have my feeble attempt at it. What I found was, rather than having to thumb through all of these rules every time I wasn't sure about whether I was making a legitimate move or not, I studied them closely, and I came up with a little crib sheet. And I used to keep this by me right at the beginning of a game, and I could see at the various stages of the game what moves I was allowed to make and what moves I wasn't allowed to make, and that is considerably shorter than that. And what I'll do, obviously, I'll flash these up as we go through the game, and then what I will do, I will put this on the screen at the very end. You can either do a screen capture, or I might try and do something a little bit better and put it as a PDF on Facebook or whatever, and you can print it off from there if you so wish. But I certainly found having a crib sheet helped me no end. So what we've got at the moment is the basic setup of the game of bow. And in actual fact, before I start going on, I'll talk a bit about the board and about the number of seeds that we've got. So the board consists of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 holes in 4 rows. So in all we've got 32 holes on the board. These on this side are mine, these on this side are my opponent's. And I'm sure you've noticed there is one curiously shaped hole which is square, and that is the hole that we know as the house. And it does have certain special rules which relate to that. It controls sowing in that hole, moving from that hole, and we'll go into those in a little bit more detail in a while. We've already discussed the holes at the end, which these are the holes where we actually return the seeds to the board. There are other little subtleties which we will have to go through, but that's just the board in basic. So we play with these lovely seeds. These are actually what they call Bonduk seeds, and these seem to be the most popular thing that people play with. There can be played with stones, you could use marbles, you can use anything, and I've heard even in fact that in certain parts of Africa they actually use goat dung as well, but I've never tried that one for myself. We have 64 seeds in total, and they're evenly divided up between my opponent and myself, so we end up with 32 seeds. At the basic start of the game, we place 6 seeds in the house. 2 seeds in the hole to the right of it, and 2 seeds in the hole to the right of that. My opponent does the same thing. In his house, 6 seeds, 2 seeds, 2 seeds. So we end up each with 10 seeds on the board, and just so that you know that you've not done it the wrong way, and you've ended up by putting seeds in there and seeds in that way, if you just remember that at the very beginning of the game there should not be a capture situation. So as we can see, we've got seeds opposite here, so we couldn't start the game in this actual situation. So you fill the 6 seeds into the house, and you put 2 seeds into the hole next to it and 2 seeds into the hole next to that, and they shouldn't be overlapping each other, so that way you can get them in the right direction. So that's the basic start of the game. So we put 10 seeds each in the front row, and that leaves myself and my opponent. I've got 22 seeds left. My opponent has 22 seeds left. And in this, what we call the first stage of the game, we start to introduce these remaining seeds to the board. So one at a time, each turn, we will bring a seed into play. That consists or makes up the first stage of the game. Once all the seeds are returned to the board and every single seed is on the board, if we've got to that stage without someone having lost, then we enter what we call the second phase of the game, and the rules just vary slightly again. There are certain other rules, and it differs in how we move about the board, because obviously we can't be bringing seeds back onto the board because they're already all there. So what I'm going to do is start off with the very first stage of the game. Okay, so let's look at the first stage, and let's get stuck in straight away and look at what we've got in front of us. I'm going to go first. I've got my seed ready, and I've got to introduce a seed to the board, and the seeds are in their starting position. Now my little crib sheet tells me that in this first stage of the game, if we do a harvest move, it can only start in the front row, obviously, because you can only capture in the front row. And if we do a move without capture, that must also start in the front row. It cannot start from the back row, it has to start from the front row. Going back on what we said before, looking at the state of the board, do I have any captures? Because if there is a capture there, I would be obliged to make it. But as we can see, we don't. We have no seeds in the front row with any seeds of our opponent opposing. So I am now going to have to make a move without capture. The house has special rules, as I said, and here is one of the first ones, and that is I cannot make or start a move without capture from the house. All the time there are pits with seeds in the front row. If it was the only pit in the front row with seeds in it, then I could do that, and I will come on to explain a bit more. So at the moment, my first move, I can't capture. It has to be a move without capture. I cannot make it from the house. It's got to be from this hole or this hole. I'm going to go for this hole here. So I take my seed, I place that in there. Now I've got a choice here at the moment. There is no direction. I can choose the direction in which I wish to go. I can pick these now 3 seeds up. It is as if we've just landed in that hole coming in from a direction, but there is no direction. So we pick those 3 seeds up. Obviously we don't sow back into that hole. We can either go in this direction or in this direction, and I am going to go in that direction. So the 3 seeds now, 1, 2, we turn the corner and we go towards the back row, and that is my first move without capture. Alright, so now it's my opponent's turn. I'm going to be making the moves for my opponent because I'm the only one here. He's in the same situation as I was. He has no captures, so he also has to make a move without capture. So he's going to take one of his seeds and he's going to do something a little bit different. He's going to add it to this hole, but instead of moving as I did back round the board, he's going to come across in front of me. 1, 2, 3. And that's his move made. I pick up my seed now and I'm ready now to make my move. Now we've got a completely different situation in front of me now, because whereas before I had no captures, we now have a situation where there is a seed opposing mine, and that is a capture for me, and therefore I'm obliged to make this capture. If there were a situation where there were 2 opposing in different places, I would be looking upon this one as a very serious threat to me, because if I don't make that capture, my opponent could capture not 1, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of my seeds. So it's imperative that I protect these seeds, and I'm going to do that by capturing, but as I say, in this particular situation I am forced to do it. So I place my 1 seed in there. It's treated as if it was the last seed in a series of seeds going in, and I now capture this seed. They weren't coming in from any particular direction. There was no direction. I didn't come in from left or right. So when I take this seed now from my opponent, I can either bring it in here or I can bring it in here. And I am going to choose to bring it here at this end. And now it's my opponent's turn. So my opponent's wondering what to do now. Anyway, what he's going to do, there are no captures. He's got to make a move without capture. So he's going to place a seed in this pit here, moving towards the centre. He's decided. Could go towards the back, he's going towards the centre. So 1, 2, 3. That's his turn. My turn again. And I'm back in exactly the same situation as I had before. I have now got a capture there. Can't look at anything else. There is a capture there. I am obliged to make it. So, take my seed, drop it in that pit, capture this seed. And I can introduce it to this hole or to this hole. Now, here I need to have a little think about this, because obviously when I bring this back into the hole, it's as if it's the last seed landing in, so I will continue to sow. It doesn't really make such a lot of difference to me, but I'm going to bring it back in on this side now. So it lands in there, it's as if it's the last seed that's fallen in the hole, and then I continue the sowing. So I pick those back out, 1, 2. Remember what I said, when you bring a seed back in on your side after a capture, it cannot be sown towards the back. They have to be sown towards the front row, on the front row towards the centre. So now that's my go. My opponent is now in the situation where he's got a capture, because he's looking here, and yep, there we've got one. We've got a seed facing one of his seeds. So again, he is obliged to make the capture. So he's going to take one of his seeds, place that in there, pick this seed up. There was no direction, so he can choose to bring it back in there or back in there. Now he's going to choose to bring it back over this side, and there's a very good reason why he might want to do that, because of course if he brought it back over this side, immediately there's a capture for me. But now he's choosing to bring it back over on that side, so now it's my turn to go. Right, on my go, what I'm going to do, no captures actually available, so I'm going to make a move without capture, put that in there, and I'm going to decide to go this way. Right, it's now my opponent's turn, and I want you to put yourself in my opponent's shoes, because obviously he has to make a capture. He will get one of these seeds as a capture, bearing in mind that on my next go the chances are I'm going to capture some seeds for him. So I mean, which pit are you going to defend? And it's obviously going to be the pit with more seeds in it, because I am now threatening that pit with this seed here in the same way as I'm threatening this pit here with this seed here. But you've just got to cut your losses sometimes in the game. Would you rather lose, what, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 8 seeds there to be lost, and there are 2 seeds to be lost there. So I think I'd rather, you know, from the opponent's point of view, he's only going to want to sacrifice the 2 seeds. So he takes a seed, places it in that pit there, which enables him to capture this seed here. Now he's in a very, very fortunate situation. It's a move that started with a capture. He can move this seed now to here or to here. He's going to bring it back on his side of the board. Well, he decides to bring it back over here, and this is good. He's brought it back here. He now picks these seeds up. He can obviously only go in that direction because you can't go in the way of the back row. 1, 2. The last seed has landed in here. There were already seeds in here. There was already a seed opposite. It's another capture situation. And sure enough, because that seed has landed in there, he now can capture this seed. So he's been very fortunate, and he's been able to capture the seed from here and capture the seed from here, eliminating the threat. Now this is where we come on to one of the rules about bringing a seed back in. Remember before I said to you it could be brought into either this hole or into this hole? Well, when we captured this seed, we were actually going in a direction, and we were going in that direction, or should I say my opponent was going in that direction, okay? And we have to maintain that same direction of play. And as you are aware, if we bring the seed on this side, it has to be sown towards the centre. The direction was this way. If I brought the seed back in on that side, I'm going then against the direction of sowing. So the captured seed must be brought in on that side, because if it was a continuation of sowing, it would want to be going in that direction. I'll do that move again in a minute, because it probably sounds a little bit complicated, but my opponent has made a very, very good move there, because he's captured both of my threatening seeds. You know, that is considered to be a very, very good move. Okay, it's my turn. My opponent has put one over on me there by capturing both of those seeds. So I've got no captures to make. I've got to make a move without capture. And I'll just go through these quickly because I want to start to illustrate a point of actually around the house. So I'm going to sow in there and move these seeds towards the back row. My opponent also has captures, so he's going to make no captures rather, so he's going to have to make a move without. He's going to do a similar thing. He's going to bring one of his seeds in, bring it into that pit there, and he's also going to move some seeds towards the back row. Pick up another seed. My move, I'm going to put that one in there, those three seeds. I'm going to move these towards the back row. I don't want to make any confusion over this hole. When I put that seed in there, it wasn't a captured seed. As I said to you, if you capture and bring back into the board, then they have to be fed on the front row towards the centre. This wasn't a captured seed. This was a freshly introduced seed. So I can bring this back round towards the back row. So 1, 2, 3. We've landed in a pit where there was also already a seed, or seeds, there was already a seed in there, so you have that same continuation of sowing. So 1, 2, so that carries on, and then that's my move. Now it's my opponent's move. What's he going to want to do? He's going to do bring that one in there, carry on sowing. Oh, got that one out. He's got the same situation. The last seed landed in there. He'll pick those up and then carry on with the continuation of sowing as we did. Right, okay. Now, on this board, I have no captures to make, and the only option to me is to make a move without capture. Now, from my little crib sheet earlier, I told you that you couldn't actually begin a move without capture from the house, unless it is the only pit that's filled on the front row, and we have that exact situation now. There are no other holes with seeds in them. The only pit that's open to me is the house, and it has 6 or more seeds in it. In this case it has 8 seeds in there. When I say house, it is only functional as a house, i.e. the rules of the house apply all the time that it has 6 seeds in there. If it has less than 6 seeds, it's not considered to be a house. It's just considered the same as any other pit unless it regains 6 seeds. So how do we make our move with no capture in the house? We don't sow the whole of the house. What we do, we bring one seed in and we take 2 seeds out, and we can go in either direction that we like. So I'm going to go this way, so I'll put 1 seed in, 1, 2 seeds going that way, and that's my move. And that's how we make a move without capture from the house, but it can only be done when there are no other seeds in pits on the front row. Okay, so it's now my opponent's turn, and obviously I am threatening the house on his side. It is his own capture, so he would be obliged to take it anyway, and indeed he would want to, because obviously there is a threat of capture from my seed here. So he'll place a seed in there, capture this seed, and he can bring it in left or right as he wishes. He's going to bring it in on this side, so it lands in there as if it's the last seed, and then picks all of those 4 seeds up and then sows them towards the centre. 1, 2, 3 and 4. So that's his move. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a deliberately daft move now, but it's only to illustrate another problem that we can come up against with regards to the house and one of the rules that apply there. So it's my go, the house is threatened and this seed here is threatened. I've got a capture, I've got a choice. I can make either one of those captures, it doesn't matter. I do have to capture, but I've got a choice of which one to do. Now naturally I would want to protect my house because it has more seeds in it, and I would want to remove the threat by capturing that seed. But I'm not going to do that in this case. We're just going to have to pretend that I've completely missed it, I haven't seen that, and we're going to capture this seed here. So place my seed in there, take this seed out of here, and what am I going to do? I'm going to put it in there. Okay? Now my opponent's eyes probably light up at this stage and he thinks, right, okay, so he's going to take his seed, and the first thing he's going to do is capture here. He is obliged because it is the only capture that's open to him, and indeed he would want to do that because there is an awful lot of seeds there. Doesn't really matter, so we're going to put that in there. Doesn't really matter which side we bring these from at the moment. You probably would pay a little more attention to what other seeds you've got spread around the board. Let's bring them in from this side. So he's picked these up, he's captured these seeds from me, and he's going to introduce them in one of the end holes. And he's going to start from this one. Now, the last seed fell in an already occupied hole, so we pick those up again and we continue the sowing, and that's going to continue round from there round to the back of this board. That last seed has landed in an already occupied hole, so we pick those, continuation of the sowing. 1, 2, 3, same thing again. 1, 2, and as you can see, the more seeds that you begin to get round the board, that sowing can continue for quite some considerable time. Okay, my turn after my last disastrous attempt, because obviously I've now allowed my opponent to capture all the seeds in my house. My turn. There are 2 captures available to me, one here and one here. In the same breath, not only are they captures for me, but they're also a threat to me if I don't eliminate them. I would lose 2 seeds here, I'd lose 1 seed there. Now what I can do in this situation is remove the threat to both, and that's quite simple because of the position of this particular capture that is open to me. And I can do that by taking my seed, capturing from this seed here. So I place that in there and I capture this seed. Now remember, I said I can bring it in that hole or that hole. I'm going to bring it in this hole. It's the last seed that's landed. It's a fresh seed coming in, captured seed. It's landed in a hole where there is a capture. So by landing in there, I also now capture this one. So that one becomes one of my seeds as well. And then I pick those up and I continue sowing again. Captured seeds, they've got to come towards the centre of the front row. 1, 2, 3. And that's my go. Now I've eliminated the threat on both of those. I've given my opponent captures, but I'm actually facing more seeds than he is of mine. So hopefully I've come off a little better from that particular manoeuvre. So we'll carry on with that manoeuvre. So what's my opponent going to do? His worst threat is, let's say, to 3 seeds here. So let's pick that one up. He brings that one in and decides to bring that seed back over there. Now it's my turn. I've got 2 captures open to me. I can do a very good move here because what I can do, I can place my seed in that one, pick these 2 up. 1, 2. Now this last seed has fallen in here. There was a seed on my side, there was a seed on my opponent's side. That is a capture. I bring it back on this side, in this hole. There's a seed there, there was a seed there. That was also a capture. I capture that seed. So in that one move I've captured 3 of my opponent's seeds. So that comes back into that hole, and then I sow these. 1, 2, 3. Landed in an empty hole, that's the end of my go. Now it's my opponent's go, and he can see straight away he's got to capture. He has to make that move. Indeed, he would want to make that move because I'm actually threatening 4 of his seeds. So he takes 1 of his seeds, places it in there, captures my seed, and he's decided to bring that back over there. So that's quite a good show of how you can actually capture more than 1 seed in a single go. You know, in that situation we captured actually 3 seeds. Okay, well, I've come away from the game that we sort of had in progress, and I've just moved some seeds around the board in order to illustrate some other points. Now, I've put a house back again on my side, and I'm just going to refer to some rules that my little crib sheet refers to. And one of the things that you have to bear in mind is if you have a situation, I'll just take those out of there because that rather messes that up. If you have a situation where you've got to make a move without capture, all the time that there is a house, you can make a move or begin a move without capture from a single seed. Okay, I could begin it from there, there, or there. Now that situation changes quite drastically when we have no house. And by no house, that doesn't mean to say all of those seeds are gone. I mean, there could be sort of 3, but there are not 6 seeds in the house. But I've taken the house out completely so that there's no confusion. Now, if there is no house, the move without capture has to start from a pit with more than 1 seed. There's no choice in that. So in this situation, if it was my go, I was going to bring a seed in, make a move without capture, it would have to start from this pit here, which has the 2 seeds in it. Now that situation changes again if we have the situation that we've got now, that I'm making, where we have pits with only 1 seed. And in that situation, and only that situation, can we begin a move without capture from a pit with 1 seed. So all the time that, just to go back over that, all the time that we have a functional house, i.e. a house with 6 seeds in it, we can begin a move without capture from a single seed. If there is no house, the move without capture has to begin from a pit with more than 1 seed. If then there are only pits with 1 seed on that front row, then and only then can you begin a move without capture from a pit with 1 seed. So again, this is why it's so handy to have this crib sheet in front of you when you're actually beginning the first, your first few games that you have, to try and get these rules into your mind, because it's just such hard work going back over the rules again and reminding yourself, because these rules do change and there are slight variations when you come on to the second stage. I think that just about covers most of it. There is one other thing that I have left out, and that is about the reversal of direction in play, and I'll just set the board up in order to illustrate that. It's not that complicated, but it's very important in the game. Okay, I'm just going to go back over what I said about capture and maintaining the direction of capture in a game, and that's I think it's best if I show you by this little demonstration. It's my turn. I have a choice of captures. I'm going to capture this seed here. So take my seed, place it in there, we capture this seed. I'm going to bring it over to this side, not to this side, I'm going to bring it over here to there. So because it's now landed in there, I carry on sowing. It has to be sown towards the middle of the front row. So I go 1, 2, 3. I'm now able, because it's landed in there, there was already a seed in there and there was a seed opposite, I can now capture this seed. But the important thing is, we had a direction of travel when we captured it. We were going in an anti-clockwise direction. So when I bring this seed back in, if it was, let's say, more than one seed, in fact, let's just do that. Let's just take, let's imagine there were 3 seeds in it. I pick those 3 seeds. When I re-sow these seeds, I have to maintain that same anti-clockwise direction, and I cannot do it by bringing them in on this side because I have to sow towards the centre, and that would be going opposing the direction. So the 3 seeds I captured, I have to bring in from this side again, and then we are maintaining that same direction of travel. Pick those up, and there is a continuation of sowing, and it maintains the same direction of travel. Now there is a situation where this can actually reverse and the opposite direction of travel occurs, and that is even during the same move, and I'll just set the board up to illustrate the point I'm going to make there. Okay, so set the board up in the way I want to demonstrate this move, and what I'm trying to say here is that all the time you capture seeds from this area, the centre area of the board, you can choose the direction of travel unless it's following a previous capture, in which case you have to maintain the direction of travel. That situation changes if the capture is made in the 2 outermost holes on the board. If that situation occurs, then you bring the seeds that you capture back into the hole that's nearest. So any capture that's made here or here will have to come back in here. Any capture that's made here or here will have to come back in here. And that can actually have the effect of reversing the direction of travel during the game. And I'll show you what I mean by that now. I'm just going to add a couple of extra seeds in there. Right, so if I've set this up correctly, so here I go, it's my turn, and I'm going to capture this seed here. So I place 1 seed in there, and I pick up this seed here. I decide to bring it over here. Now my direction of travel now is anti-clockwise. I go 1, 2, 3. I capture from here. I have to maintain that same anti-clockwise direction, so I have to come in from this side and go this way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now I have another capture to make here. Because it's in one of these last 2 holes, rather than maintaining the direction of travel that way, I have to then reintroduce these at this end of the board. So now these will come in 1, 2, 3. I pick these up. We'll carry on with the same direction of travel. So you can see that that actual direction reversed during that move and went back the other way, and it can reverse more than once if there is a capture available. So I'm just carrying on sowing here. You can see this move can continue on and on for some considerable time, and that's it, landed in an empty hole. So that's the end of that particular move. So that's what I was coming on to say. This, by landing or capturing in either of these 2 outer holes, it does have the effect that you then have to bring the seed back in at the closest hole to it. It's brought back into the same holes, the same holes at the end, but that it does have a control over the direction, and it can actually make it reverse during the game. Okay, here's another rule which specifically relates to the house. If we've got to make a move without a capture, and let's just do the move this way, so I'm going to bring 1 seed into this pit, bring that in there, and then sow these. Normally, if we end up there, we would carry on sowing with these, so you would get a continuation of sowing. Okay, we'll just put this situation back. Now let's say we go the other way. So I'm going to place that seed in there, and we're going to move in this direction. Because it's a move without capture, the last seed is going to land in the house. And if it's a functional house, i.e. it has 6 or more seeds in there, the move will end in the house. And that is only if it is a move without capture. So when that last seed lands in the house, there the move must end. Okay, there is another rule which relates to the house, and that is during a capture move. And you can choose whether or not to carry on sowing if your last seed lands in the house, if no capture is possible. So I'll just try and illustrate this point. I've got a capture here, so I'm going to introduce a seed, place that seed in there, pick this one up, bring it into that pit there. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now there's no capture opposite. If there was, I would have to make the capture, but there is no capture opposite. I have started with a capture move. This is different to a move without capture. I now have the choice. I can either stop at this point, or I can pick all these seeds up and carry on sowing. In most situations you would probably want to sow the house. It's usually more beneficial, but obviously a more experienced player would choose his moments to do this, and he might want to hold back on the house. It is a rule of the game that you can actually have a choice there, but that only follows a capture move. What I was talking about previously was a move without capture, and you have no choice. The move must stop at the house, but you can choose once you've already made a capture in the move. Okay, some more rules about the house. If you sow the contents of your house, i.e. you've made a capture and then you end up landing in the house and you decide to continue with that move and you've sown them, that is your house in effect destroyed. You may end up in a situation again where by just the distribution of seeds you end up putting say 6, 7, 8 seeds back in that pit. It's no longer a house. It's treated exactly as a normal pit. And the same is true if you have a house and your opponent captures it. That is the end of your house. Your house is destroyed. This hole, no matter how many seeds you then put back in there, behaves as a normal house. If you've actually not sown the contents, but let's say you've made a move without capture from this pit, and you remember what I said to you before, that if we have to make a move without capture, we put 1 seed in and 2 seeds out. You could end up doing that a couple of times if you've actually moved your seeds all around the board, and that's the only pit that you're able to do that from. Remember, it's not a very good illustration because obviously it has to be the only filled pit in the front row for you to be able to do that. But if you've got less than 6 seeds, once it again gets 6 seeds back in there, if you manage to sow some other seeds or add some seeds back in there, that becomes a functional house. But it ceases to become a house once the entire contents are sown, when you land in there after capture, or if your opponent captures your house. It's quite a complicated hole. There are more rules that relate to that house than any other hole on the board. But it does lend the game a certain flavour, and it controls it. It's quite exciting if you can capture your opponent's house, it certainly adds something to the game by having the house there rather than just treating it as another normal hole. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the second stage of the game. Remember we said we had 10 seeds that we initially placed onto the board, and each player in turn then adds his other 22 seeds, bringing all 64 seeds eventually onto the board. After each turn, each player adds a seed. They may be pretty well unevenly balanced. It may be that your opponent has more of your seeds than you do, but you will have all brought all of the seeds onto the board. Once the last seed has been brought onto the board, we then enter what's known as the second stage of the game. And things just move on slightly differently here, and easier in some ways, but it's usually it usually wants a lot more thinking about at this stage because there are just so many more seeds on the board. Remember, in the game of bow, unlike other Mancala games, we don't bear seeds off the board. All we do is just pull them, they're reintroduced, but back onto your own side of the board. And the object of the game is to deplete the front row of your opponent or to leave him with no legal moves. And I'll come on to explain a little bit more about that in a while. So once again, we're now at the stage. I'm going to just pretend that my opponent has put his last seed onto the board. I've already done mine. I've got no seeds left in my hand. He hasn't actually managed to wipe me off the board yet, and I haven't him, so we're now into the second stage. Two types of move once more. There is the move with capture, there is the move without capture. So we don't have any seeds to now place on the board. So how do we go about capturing? Well, we do it by picking up one of the contents of the holes, moving them in whichever direction we choose in order to make a capture. We're under the same constraints as before. If there is a capture available, we must take it, or we are obliged to take it. We can't make a move without capture if there is a move without capture available. And just because you have seeds that are opposing you doesn't necessarily mean to say that that is necessarily a capture situation now, because you have to pick one of the holes, move it around the board, and only if the last seed lands in that hole can you make that capture. It's pretty obvious that I'm going to have a capture because literally there is something opposing in every hole on the board. You can now pick up any one of these holes. It can be the front row or it can be from the back row. Remember before when we introduced a seed, it was introduced into the front row. But what we can do now is make a capture picking up either from the front row or from the back row. But the seeds that we pick up from the back row in the initial turn must reach the front row in order to make a capture. Let me just illustrate what I mean. If I were to look at these seeds here, I've got 6 seeds here. So if I were to pick those up and we were to just count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you can see it's going to land in a pit where there are already seeds and there is already a capture opposite. So that move is available to me. I could do the same with here. I could pick up these 2 seeds. Let's count round. 1, 2. There is already seeds here. There are seeds opposite. I would capture these 2 seeds. Looking at these 2 seeds here, I could not do that from here because these would not reach the front row to a position where I could capture. So that's not a move that's open to me. We could move these 2, 1, 2, and then capture from there. We can't move from a single seed. It has to be more than 1 seed, okay, but not more than 15 seeds. And that situation can actually occur, but that would involve, if you have more than 15 seeds, it would actually, if you think about it, it would actually bring you back round to where you started from. So you cannot make the capture move with more than 15 seeds, but it must be more than 1. So I could pick up 2 and move along to make the capture, but I could not pick up 1 and then move to there and make the capture. I could pick up these 3 and move this way and make a capture. What you've got to look at, it gets very, very complicated because you've got to look at not only what can you capture from there, but when you reintroduce those seeds, what will happen from there. Let me just make a random move. I haven't really looked at this, but let's just start from there. I'm going to pick up these 3. Go 1, 2, 3. Oh, 3. I've made a capture here. Because it was in one of these end holes, although the direction of travel was that way, I actually reintroduced them this way because it was from the end holes. Remember what I was saying earlier about reintroducing them? They have the effect of reversing. I've captured these 2, 1, 2. I now capture that one, bring it back on this side. That lands in there. No capture opposite, but I make a continuation of the move. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I capture from there. This is not in the end 2 holes, so we have to maintain the direction of travel. I was travelling this way, I must bring it back from this side of the board. 1, 2. Pick up these. Pick up these 2. Now, I don't bring from this way because it's in this one of the last 2 holes. I now am obliged to bring these in on this side. 1, 2. And then we go back the other way. And that's the end of my move. And now it's down to my opponent to also make a move. And as we said before, just because there are seeds opposite now doesn't necessarily mean to say that they're going to be captures. He has to have seeds that he can pick up and physically reach. In his situation, he does. He can take these three, go 1, 2, 3. He has a capture here. 1, 2, 3. That doesn't make a capture. 1, 2, 3. No, that doesn't make a capture. We've got 4 seeds here. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, there's nothing in there, so that doesn't make a capture. And 4 that way doesn't reach round to the front of the board. If there were 5, it would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Capture these 2 here. He can't do it. There's not enough. So we are actually very limited to what we can do with captures here. We could pick up these 2 and go 1, 2, and then make a capture there, as I say, or these 3. The 3 here don't reach in any shape or form. So it's a question of, do we use those or do we use those? Let's pick this one. 1, 2. He picks those up. He's got to maintain that direction of travel, so they get reintroduced over this side. I'm sorry, it's probably not the best of ways to be doing this. He's landed here. He captures from me, maintaining that same direction of travel. 1, 2, 3. Landed here again. There's a capture. Picks those up. Maintain the same direction of travel. 1, 3. Landed in there. Nothing in there, so he continues sowing. 1, 2. Picks these up. Continues sowing. And the last seed lands in an empty pit on his side. That is the end of my opponent's turn. Can I capture? 1, 2, 3. Yes, I can capture from there. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I can make it with this one. I can make it 1, 2 to there with this one. Various options are actually open to me there. I'm going to bring these ones round here and capture this way round. 2, 3, 4. Pick up those 2. Maintain the same direction of travel. 1, 2. I capture these 3, bringing them in the same direction. Again, I capture these 3. 1, 2, 3. Nothing in the hole opposite. I continue with my sowing. 1, 2, 3. It's landed in an empty hole. That is the end of my move. Right, okay, so we've spoken about capture in the second stage of the game. Now we're looking at the situation I find myself in. My opponent's played quite well. He's got quite a few of my seeds there. It's my turn. And can I capture? Well, let's have a little look at the board. I've got 5 seeds at the front here. Obviously, that's going to bring me around the back. Can't make it from there. Remember, although you get continuation of sowing, that's only if you can start with a capture. I couldn't come round here, reach here, then bring these round and then capture. It would have to be my very first landing would have to make a capture. Right. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, that won't do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, there's no seed opposite, so or no seed there. I can't make a capture there. 4 that way brings me to the back of the board. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nothing opposite. 1, 2. I have no captures. There are no captures available to me whatsoever. Remembering we can't capture using 1 seed, so that is not an option going that way. Just to recap on that rule. So now I have to do a move without capture. Very much as before, we move in the same way. We just have to select a pit, move around the board. Even if we find then, once we've started the move without capture, if we find we're in a position where it looks like a capture, it's not a capture because we started the move without a capture. It has to occur, it has to be from a pit with more than 1 seed on the front row. Now, only and only if there are only pits with 1 seed on the front row can you start your move without capture from the back row. It is permissible to go from the back row, but only if there are pits only in the front row with 1 seed, because we can't start with 1 seed. So we got pits with more than 1 seed in the front row, so let's see what we're going to do here. I'm just going to pick these up and I'm just going to move them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's my go, and that's all that I can do. And now it's my opponent's turn. Now he's got a capture. I'm not really going to look too closely. Let's just do a capture for him. There, picks that one, captures that, puts that in there. He's got a capture there. That comes in. 1, 2, 3, lands in an empty hole. He's now, that's the end of his go. Right, now let's look at my situation again. Can I capture? Yes, I can. I've got a choice now. I've got 2 seeds here. I can go 1, 2, capture there. I can go 1, 2 and capture there. I'm going to be landing back in either one of these pits if I capture, and I'm going to just land with, there's only 1 seed to be captured here, so I'm going to end up there or there, and I'm not going to go any further than that. Ideally it would be good to capture a pit that has more than 1 seed, so then I can then travel back along the board, but I don't think that option is open to me at all. No, I can't make it there or any other way. So I can either do it by going this way or that way. So let's just go this way, capture that one, maintaining that same direction of travel, remember. That now comes onto that side of the board, and it's my opponent's turn. Let's just have a quick look. What's he got? He can bring these round. He's got 4 over here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Captures these 2. 1, 2. Continues his sowing. 1, 2. Landed in an empty hole. That's the end of his sowing. Right, can I make a capture? 1, 2. These bring me around the other side of the board. I have no capture. I can do nothing in this situation. So now again, I've got to make a move without capture. Got to be from the front row, and it has to be from a pit with more than 1 seed. So I have 2 choices. I can either use this pit or this pit, and I'm going to spread from this pit. Landed there. We can continue with the sowing. Landed in an empty pit, and that's the end of my move. And so we continue. What I'll do now, I think I've basically covered most of the rules, and we'll just go and see a couple of situations, a couple of winning situations, and there are 2 ways of winning, either by depletion of the front row or with no legal moves, and I'll come on to show you a couple of those. Okay, let's look at the following situation, and I find myself in a pretty poor old state of affairs. I can't make a capture. There is no capture available. I've got to make a move without capture. It should be from the front row, but again, we've only got single seeds in the front row. I cannot make a move without capture from a single seed in the front row. So I can do it from the back row if there's only single seeds in the front row. And again, I've got the same problem. The only one that's available to me is this move here. I've got 2 seeds, and I can either go right or left with these. What happens when I do that? I'm left with only single seeds. There's no way I can go, or nothing that I can do, and in this situation I have lost, because once I get now to this situation, I cannot physically pick up a single seed. My opponent hasn't depleted me of all of the seeds of my front row, but he has put me in a situation where I have no legitimate moves to make, and at this stage I have lost the game, and I have to sort of shake his hand and say well done. Right, the other way in which we can lose, unfortunately, is by our opponent depleting our front row. I've had my go. It's not a very good state of affairs. It's now my opponent's turn, and he can do exactly that, because what he can do, he can take these 2 seeds here, 1, 2, he captures this one, maintaining that direction of travel. He can bring that seed back in over there, plonks that one in there, captures those 3 seeds. My front row is empty, and that's the end of my game, and that happens all too frequently, I'm afraid. Well, I hope you don't end up looking at a board that's in this stage too often. It's my hope that perhaps it looks a little more something like that, but that will only come with plenty of practice. What I have done, I mean, most of the moves and the holes have Swahili names. I don't speak that language at all, and although I've seen the words written down, I've not endeavoured to use them. I've put them obviously bracketed in the descriptions before each section of this little video. I haven't attempted to pronounce them because I just don't think I will be doing them justice. I don't know the pronunciations. If anyone does and they want to contribute that, we can always put a little file at the end of the video and get those words correctly. But I really don't want to put out any misinformation. There are a number of variations of the game that you may see. This game, the title of this game is called Bao la Kiswahili, and it's the Bao of the Swahili. It's played mainly by people certainly in Tanzania and on the island of Zanzibar, which is, I think, where most of these rules have actually came from. I've picked these up from a couple of sources. Very, very good. As I say, that the rules are comprehensive, but they're very, very difficult to actually learn the game from. And I'm not suggesting that this is has necessarily made it any easier, but I would like to think so. I'm open to any criticism. This is the first sort of one of these I've done in the instruction of a game. If I've put anything wrong, let me know, because I will certainly amend it. And this is only here really until either I do something better or hopefully someone else might do. So enjoy the game, and I hope you get something from it. I'm going to put some a little index in the write-up on YouTube, so that you can sort of stop it at particular places, a little time index, so you know where to stop it if there's something particular about the game you want to look up. And hopefully I'll do some PDF printouts that you can print out to yourself, and I'll probably put those on my Facebook page with a link to where the full rules are as well, because hopefully the full rules will make more sense having seen it laid out on the board like this. Anyway, good luck.